The crystal glasses had barely stopped ringing for my sister's promotion toast when the first wheeze tore out of my throat. It sounded ugly, small, like air scraping through a door that would not open. My sister Celeste stood on the little podium at the front of the private dining room, one hand wrapped around the microphone, her new public relations director's smile shining beneath amber lights. "Here we go again," she said, rolling her eyes for the executives around her. "Nia, please do not make a scene. It is mushroom soup. There is no crab in it. Or are you trying to ruin my promotion party too?" A few people laughed because powerful rooms teach people to laugh before they understand what is happening. I was on the carpet by then. My lips were swelling. My tongue felt too large for my mouth. My hands clawed at my throat while my lungs pulled for air that would not come. Celeste thought she had landed the perfect joke. What she did not know was that the man sitting across from me, Gideon Vale, chairman of Vale Meridian Group and the person who had just approved her promotion, had a daughter with a deadly shellfish allergy. He knew what anaphylaxis looked like. He knew it did not care about jokes, family dynamics, or public relations optics. Before my sister could finish smirking, Gideon Vale was already moving, pulling an EpiPen from inside a $5,000 suit jacket and crossing the room with the speed of a man who had practiced this nightmare in his mind for years. But to understand how I ended up dying on a restaurant floor while my sister accused me of acting, I need to start earlier that evening. My name is Nia Hartwell. I am 26 years old, African American, and I restore antique books for a living. In academic circles, people sometimes call me a surgeon for history because I am quiet, controlled, and very good with delicate things that other people have damaged. My work does not look glamorous to people who only respect glass offices and job titles. It looks like paper dust, tiny brushes, humidity chambers, cotton gloves, spines separated from text blocks, acid damage stabilized one page at a time. But I have saved manuscripts that survived wars, floods, careless airs, mold blooms, broken attics, and centuries of neglect. I know how to read a stain and tell whether it came from water, wine, smoke, skin oil, or time. I know which paper can be lifted, which adhesive can be softened, and which damage has to be contained because repairing it would destroy what remains. My hands are steady because they have to be. That steadiness saved my life. It took years to build that steadiness. When I was a child, my hands shook whenever Celeste cried because I knew what came next. If she lost a board game, I had to let her win the next one. If she did poorly on a test, I had to stop talking about my grades. If she wanted a dress I had saved for, my mother would say, "You are more practical than she is, Nia. You understand." I understood so much that it became my assigned personality. I understood when Celeste borrowed my clothes and returned them stained. I understood when she told her friends I was creepy because I liked old books. I understood when she took credit for the birthday speech I wrote for Dad, and everyone praised her for being thoughtful. Understanding became the family word for disappearing without complaint. My grandparents were the only people who saw something else in me. My grandmother collected church programs, family Bibles, funeral cards, and letters from relatives who had migrated north and west during the Great Migration. She kept them wrapped in tissue inside cedar boxes, and she let me sit beside her while she unfolded them. "Paper remembers," she told me. "People lie, but paper keeps receipts." That sentence became the foundation of my life. While Celeste learned how to charm a room, I learned how to notice what people tried to erase. Celeste is 29. She had just been promoted to Public Relations Director at Vale Meridian Group, one of the biggest multinational firms in the country. Celeste had been chasing that title for years, feeding it late nights, favors, fake friendships, and every ounce of charm she could manufacture. She was beautiful in the way magazines understand beauty: polished hair, designer clothes, perfect white teeth, and a smile she could turn on like showroom lighting. Where I preserve, Celeste performs. Where I work in silence, she needs a room watching. Our parents, Patrice and Vernon Hartwell, loved that about her because it reflected well on them. My mother loved telling people that Celeste worked at the top of corporate communications, even when Celeste was still writing press blurbs for mid-level managers. My father would mention her name in front of strangers the way some people mention Ivy League schools, letting the association do the bragging for him. Me, they described with a softer disappointment. Nia works with old books. As if I spent my days dusting shelves in a basement, as if cultural preservation was a hobby that accidentally paid rent, as if the collectors, museums, universities, and private estates that trusted me with six-figure objects were indulging a strange little talent. At family dinners, Celeste's stories filled the room, client dinners, executive retreats, brand crises, crisis simulations, media training. My father leaned in for those stories. My mother asked follow-up questions. If I mentioned a 17th-century prayer book or an archive contract, Mom's eyes would glaze after 20 seconds. "That sounds tedious, baby," she would say. Tedious. That was the word she used for anything that required patience instead of applause. If you have ever been the quiet sibling everyone expected to understand while the loud one got protected, tell me where you are listening from. That kind of training does not feel dangerous until someone uses your silence as permission. The promotion dinner was supposed to be Celeste's coronation. A private VIP room inside Aurelia, a restaurant with 3 Michelin stars, and a reservation list that treated ordinary people like roomers. The space glowed under low chandeliers, dark wood walls, cream linen, crystal glasses, silver flatware lined with mathematical precision. Servers moved like they had been trained by ballet instructors and lawyers. I did not belong there by temperament. I prefer quiet rooms and task lamps. Still, I came because my mother called me 4 times to make sure I understood that attendance was not optional. "Your sister needs family there," she said. "She has friends there. Friends are not family." That sentence had been used to draft me into more pain than any legal contract ever could, so I wore a navy dress, tied my locks back in a low twist, carried my emergency medication in my clutch, and went to celebrate a sister who had spent most of our lives treating my existence like a challenge to her spotlight. The allergy was not new information. That matters. My family had seen it before. At 12, I nearly died at a cousin's graduation cookout because someone used the shrimp salad spoon in the potato salad. My throat swelled before anyone understood why I was tugging at my collar. My father drove 90 miles an hour to the emergency room while my mother cried in the front seat and Celeste sat beside me in the back, whispering, "You are scaring everybody." Not "I am scared for you, you are scaring everybody." After that, I carried medication. Restaurants became negotiations, family events became interrogations. Who made this? What spoon touched it? Was shellfish cooked nearby? Did anyone wash the cutting board? I learned that people without deadly allergies hear questions like accusations. They take your survival personally. Celeste hated it most. She said my allergy made every dinner about me. She complained that I ruined seafood restaurants, vacation meals, office parties, and family holidays with medical drama. Once at Christmas, she waved a crab cake near my face and laughed when I stepped back. Mom told me to stop being sensitive. Dad said Celeste was only teasing, so no one in that private dining room could pretend she did not know. The first warning came in the lobby. Celeste had positioned herself near the entrance with the hungry elegance of someone waiting for a king to enter. When Gideon Vale arrived, the air shifted. He was 58, tall, silver-bearded, composed, and more comfortable with power than most people are with their own hands. Celeste stepped toward him immediately, tablet already open. "Mr. Vale," she said, "I pulled together the media response projections for the acquisition announcement, and I thought you might want to see the updated angles before dinner." He nodded politely. Then his eyes moved past her and landed on the book under my arm. It was not supposed to be a conversation piece. It was a damaged 1820 hymnal I had picked up from a client on the way over, wrapped in archival cloth because I did not want to leave it in the car. Gideon noticed the wrap, the way I held it, and the small brush case tucked in my bag. "Are you a conservator?" he asked. Celeste's smile froze. "Yes," I said. "Antique books and paper objects mostly." His face lit with genuine interest. For 20 minutes, he forgot my sister existed. He asked about deacidification, alkalization baths, mold remediation, vellum shrinkage, and the difference between rag paper and wood pulp paper. He told me Vale Meridian had acquired a private collection of 18th-century letters tied to early Black maritime trade networks and asked whether I consulted for corporate heritage archives. I did not pitch myself. I simply answered his questions. That made it worse. Celeste stood beside us in her perfect dress, holding her tablet like a shield, while the chairman of her company listened to me explain fiber analysis with the focus of a student who had found the one lecture he did not want to miss. I watched her jaw tighten. I watched her fingers press crescents into the tablet case. I watched the old fury rise. Celeste had never minded me being quiet. She minded when quiet became impressive. At the dinner table, she recovered beautifully. That was her gift. She returned to the room as if nothing had happened, laughing at the right jokes, accepting congratulations, thanking senior executives by name. My parents beamed at her from the middle of the table, eyes wet with pride they had never wasted on me. I was seated near Gideon, which Celeste had not expected. The table arrangement had been made before the lobby conversation, but she looked at it as if I had personally staged a coup. The first courses came and went: champagne, tiny amuse-bouches, salad arranged like modern art, warm bread with cultured butter. I checked every ingredient the way I always did. Deadly allergies make you either cautious or dead. My shellfish allergy had been severe since childhood. One exposure at 12 had sent me to the emergency room after a cousin used the same spoon for shrimp dip and spinach dip. My family knew. Celeste knew most of all because she had spent years mocking what she called my dramatic seafood rules. When the soup course was announced as truffle mushroom, I relaxed slightly. Mushrooms are not shellfish. Truffle is not crab. I should have stayed suspicious. About 30 minutes earlier, Celeste had excused herself from the table and gone toward the kitchen. I did not see what happened, but the evidence later filled in every step. She found Chef Luc Moreau, the celebrated chef whose food critics wrote about like he was a painter. He was known for a signature crab fat oil, made by slowly rendering blue crab roe and fat with aromatics until it became amber, glossy, and intensely savory. It was usually used in his bouillabaisse. Celeste smiled at him. "Chef Moreau, I have heard so much about your crab oil," she said. "Would you do something special for me tonight?" He was flattered. Chefs are artists, and artists can be seduced by someone who sounds like she understands the work. Celeste asked whether a touch of the crab fat oil could be added to one bowl of truffle mushroom soup as a surprise variation. "Something novel," she said. "Unexpected. A little richer." Chef Moreau hesitated because crab and truffle were unusual together, but unusual was his territory. He thought she wanted a special bowl for herself on her promotion night. He did not know my allergy. He did not know Celeste planned to weaponize his creativity. The server, Andre, later testified that Celeste made eye contact with him before the soup was served and quietly pointed to my seat. The bowl placed in front of me looked beautiful. Dark mushroom velvet, cream swirl, amber oil shining on top like melted copper. I remember the small details because trauma preserves strange things. The spoon was heavier than it looked, silver warmed by the soup. The linen napkin across my lap had been folded into a perfect rectangle. My mother was laughing at something my father whispered. Celeste was watching me from the far end of the table with her chin tilted down, a pose she used when she wanted to seem casual, but was actually measuring every reaction. Gideon had just asked whether I preferred Japanese tissue or handmade kozo for certain repairs. I had been happy answering him. That tiny happiness embarrasses me now, though it should not. I was allowed to enjoy being respected. I was allowed to enjoy being seen. Celeste saw that enjoyment too. That was why the bowl mattered to her. Celeste leaned toward me with sisterly softness. "I asked them to make yours a little lighter," she said. "Smoked chili oil and pine mushroom extract. I know you get weird about rich food." I wanted, foolishly, to believe that was kindness. The smell of truffle was overwhelming, earthy and deep, masking anything beneath it. The crab fat oil looked like chili oil under amber lighting. There was no warning, No shellfish scent I could identify over mushroom, butter, and truffle. I took one spoonful. For 5 seconds, I thought it was delicious. Then my body understood what my mind had missed. My lips tingled first, then burned, then swelled. My throat tightened so fast the room seemed to shrink around me. My tongue grew thick, my chest locked. Heat raced across my skin, and hives erupted along my arms, angry red welts spreading beneath the sleeves of my dress. I pushed back from the table. The chair caught on the carpet, my knees folded. I hit the floor hard enough to bruise my hip, but pain barely registered because I could not breathe. I heard my mother gasp. I heard a glass tip over. I heard Celeste laugh. "See?" she said, voice carrying above the sudden confusion. "She always does this. She is eating mushroom soup and pretending it is crab. This year's award for Best Actress goes to Nia Hartwell." Somebody gave an uncertain laugh. Somebody else said, "Is she okay?" Celeste stepped closer, heels clicking. "Come on, Nia. Drop the act. You got Mr. Vale's attention in the lobby. You do not need to steal the whole dinner, too." I tried to speak. Nothing came out but a whistle. My vision tunneled black at the edges. I remember thinking, very calmly, that this was how fragile things disappeared. Not always in fire, sometimes under laughter. Then Gideon Vale was beside me. "Move!" he shouted, and the room obeyed. He dropped to his knees with an EpiPen already uncapped. "Stay with me," he said, voice steady in a way that cut through panic. "You are having anaphylaxis. I have you." He drove the injector into my thigh through my dress. The needle hit hard. Epinephrine flooded me like ice and electricity. It did not fix everything. It never does immediately. But after several horrible seconds, my airway opened enough to drag in a thin breath that scraped all the way down. "Call emergency services now," Gideon barked. "Tell them severe anaphylaxis, shellfish exposure. Get oxygen if the restaurant has it." The restaurant manager stumbled for his phone. Andre ran for the first aid kit. People stood frozen with napkins in their hands, faces drained of dinner party sophistication. Celeste's smile died slowly. First confusion, then irritation, then fear. "I did not," she began. My mother rushed toward us. "What is happening? What is wrong with her?" "Someone put shellfish in her food," Gideon said, not looking away from my face. "This is not anxiety. This is not a performance. Without epinephrine, she could die in minutes." My father turned toward Celeste. For once, the pride on his face cracked. "Celeste," he said, "what did you do?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. "It is mushroom soup. She is always overreacting." Then Andre appeared near her elbow, pale and sweating. "Miss Hartwell?" he said. "Should I clear the table now? You asked me to be ready to remove the bowl after." "Not now," Celeste snapped. That was when the epinephrine cleared enough fog from my brain for instinct to return. My job is preservation. When something precious is under threat, you stabilize first. You prevent further damage. You do not let contaminated material disappear because everyone is emotional. I could not speak. My throat was too swollen and every breath hurt, but I still had my hands. I grabbed Gideon Vale's wrist. He looked down, startled. I pointed to the soup bowl. Then I made a tight fist, the closest gesture I could manage for hold, keep, preserve. His eyes sharpened. He understood. "No one touches that soup," he roared. "Security, seal this table. This is a crime scene." The 2 restaurant security guards, who had been hovering uselessly, snapped into motion and formed a barrier around the table. Celeste forced out a laugh. "Mr. Vale, do you not think crime scene is a little dramatic?" "Nothing leaves this room," he said. "Not dishes, not napkins, not glasses, not the soup. Everything stays where it is until authorities or counsel document it." My mother grabbed Celeste's arm. "Say this was an accident," she whispered. "Please say it." Celeste opened her mouth. No answer came. That silence was louder than confession. Paramedics arrived minutes later, though it felt like hours. They gave me another dose of epinephrine, fitted an oxygen mask over my face, checked my blood pressure and oxygen saturation, and started speaking in urgent, clipped language that made the executives step back. O2 in the 70s. Airway compromised. Possible biphasic reaction. Transport now. Before they lifted the stretcher, Chef Moreau burst into the private room, his white jacket marked with a splash of sauce and his face twisted with horror. "Miss Hartwell," he said to Celeste, voice shaking. "The waiter told me there was shellfish allergy. I do not understand. You requested the crab fat oil yourself. You asked me to add it to the truffle soup." Every eye turned to my sister. Chef Moreau kept talking because he was still trying to understand the shape of his own innocence. "You said it would be novel, unexpected. You said it was your special request." Andre stepped beside him, wringing his hands. "And you signaled for that specific bowl to go in front of Miss Nia," he said quietly. "You pointed to her place." Silence swallowed the room. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop glittering. My father's face went gray. My mother's hand covered her mouth. Celeste looked around as if the room might provide an exit that did not require truth. "I just thought," she said. Gideon's voice cut through her panic. "You thought what?" Celeste's face crumpled, but not from guilt, from calculation failing in public. "She always makes such a big deal about it," she said. "I thought if she had a tiny bit, she would realize she has been exaggerating all these years. Maybe she would get hives or something. I did not know she would almost die." My mother made a sound like a prayer breaking. My father whispered her name. Celeste turned on him. "This is my night," she cried. "My promotion." She spent 20 minutes in the lobby talking to Mr. Vale about old paper like she was the special one. She always does this. She finds some way to make people feel sorry for her. I lay there with oxygen over my face and hives burning across my skin, listening to my sister explain that my near death had inconvenienced her spotlight. Something in me detached. Not exploded. Detached. The emotional cord that had tied me to the idea of who Celeste should have been snapped so cleanly I almost felt peaceful. The paramedics rolled me toward the door. As I passed my parents, I looked at them one by one. My mother was crying, mascara streaking down carefully powdered cheeks. My father looked 10 years older than he had at the start of dinner. Celeste looked terrified. Good. Fear was information too. Outside, the restaurant entrance had become chaos under streetlights. Valets stood frozen. Guests had followed at a distance, phones low but visible. The ambulance doors waited open, flashing red across the pavement. Gideon stood near the stretcher with his phone in hand. "I am calling the police," he said. "This is aggravated assault at minimum. Given what she admitted, possibly attempted manslaughter." Celeste pushed past a security guard, panic ripping through her polished voice. "No, Mr. Vale, please. It was a mistake. I did not mean for this to happen. You deliberately contaminated your sister's food with an allergen you knew could harm her," he said, "at a company event on the night you were introduced as our new PR director. If I call now, you will be in handcuffs before midnight, and Vale Meridian will fully cooperate." My parents stood behind her, horrified for several reasons at once. Their daughter could have died. Their other daughter could be arrested. The family name could become a headline. I knew them well enough to recognize which fear would win first. Reputation. Always reputation. I saw the restaurant manager twisting his hands. I saw executives whispering. I saw Andre and Chef Moreau standing near the doorway, both pale but ready to tell the truth. I saw Gideon Vale, powerful enough to crush my sister with one phone call, waiting for police to answer. I raised my hand. The paramedic leaned over me. "Keep the mask on, ma'am." I pulled it down anyway. Every word felt like swallowing glass. "Wait." Gideon turned. So did my family. "Do not call police yet," I rasped. My mother's face flooded with relief so quickly it almost made me laugh. "Oh, Nia," she sobbed. "Thank you. You are such a good sister." My father exhaled. "We will handle this as a family." Celeste looked at me through wet eyes, and beneath the fear I saw it. Contempt. She thought I was weak. She thought I was protecting her. She thought the same soft place in me that had accepted years of insults would save her from consequences. I looked at Gideon. Arresting your new PR director tonight hurts Vale Meridian, I whispered. Stock, reputation, coverage. I do not want your company damaged because of my family. His eyes narrowed, not with suspicion but recognition. He understood strategy when he heard it. What do you want? Time, I said. My lawyer will contact everyone tomorrow. Celeste blinked. Lawyer? I turned my head toward her. For settlement. Her mouth hardened. You are going to sue your own sister? Would you prefer prison? Nobody spoke. 8 years, I whispered. State facility, or civil settlement. Your choice. Gideon looked down at me with something close to approval. Have your lawyer call my office, he said. Chef Moreau and Andre will provide statements. So will I. Vale Meridian will not protect someone who used a company event to stage an attack. Thank you, I breathed. Do not thank me, he said. You preserved the evidence while your airway was closing. Most people would not have thought that clearly. I let the paramedic replace the oxygen mask. As the ambulance doors closed, my mother was still crying. My father was saying my name like a warning. Celeste stared at me as if she had finally noticed that the quiet sister had teeth. They thought I had chosen mercy. They were wrong. I had chosen precision. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Anaphylaxis does not end when someone stabs an EpiPen into your thigh like a heroic movie scene. The swelling damaged my throat and vocal cords. My voice came back as a broken whisper. The epinephrine strained my heart, so doctors kept me monitored. I had tremors in my hands for days. The smell of mushrooms made me gag. The sight of soup on the meal tray sent my pulse racing so high a nurse came running. My body had survived. My trust had not. On the second day, while IV lines still taped my arm and my voice sounded like torn paper, I called Malcolm Pierce. Malcolm was the attorney I had used 3 years earlier in a contract dispute with a museum that tried to delay payment after I restored a water-damaged archive. He was sharp, patient, and devastatingly organized. In another life, he might have been a conservator himself because he loved evidence the way I loved paper, cleanly categorized and impossible to dismiss. He arrived at the hospital with a tablet and no flowers. I appreciated that. Start at the beginning, he said. So I did. The lobby conversation with Gideon, Celeste's jealousy, the soup, the crab oil, Andre's placement, Chef Moreau's statement, Celeste's confession, Gideon preserving the table, the EpiPen, the oxygen levels, my parents' relief when I said not yet. Malcolm listened without interrupting. His face stayed calm, but by the end his eyes had gone cold. This is extremely strong, he said. You have physical evidence, multiple third-party witnesses, an admission, medical documentation, and a corporate chairman willing to cooperate. We need sworn statements before your family starts pressuring people. Chef Moreau and Andre, I whispered, within 48 hours. Gideon Vale, too. I will contact his office today. Toxicology. Already requested. Full medical report, throat damage, cardiac strain, trauma, future treatment. He nodded. Nia, this could go criminal very easily. I know. Do you want that? I stared at the hospital ceiling for a long moment. My throat throbbed with every breath. My hands trembled on the blanket. Somewhere in my phone were messages from my mother saying, "Please call us. We are worried sick. We need to talk as a family." Family! They used that word like a solvent, expecting it to dissolve everything inconvenient. I want leverage first, I said. Malcolm's expression shifted. What number? $900,000. He did not blink. Explain. Enough to ruin her financially, enough to compensate medical expenses, lost work, trauma, treatment, and punitive damages. Low enough that a defense attorney tells her to settle instead of facing a jury. High enough that my parents have to choose whether protecting Celeste is worth sacrificing their comfort. Malcolm leaned back. You have thought this through. I nearly died. It cleared my schedule. For the first time, he smiled. It was not kind. It was useful. Mediation? Fast. 3 weeks. You want it quiet. I want it clean. If she refuses, we go criminal and civil. He tapped notes into the tablet. Anything else? No apology deal, no family counseling, no private promise, written settlement, payment schedule, liability release only after the money clears, and if they threaten me, the criminal option comes back. Malcolm closed the tablet. Your sister tried to kill you. No, I said, and my voice cracked. She tried to make me survive being humiliated. Death was just a risk she considered acceptable. That distinction mattered to me. Celeste did not want a funeral. A funeral would make her the villain too, obviously. She wanted a scene, hives, embarrassment, people laughing, me weak and red-faced while she proved I had exaggerated my allergy for attention. She wanted me alive enough to feel small. Instead, I became exact. Recovery had its own humiliations. For 2 weeks, I could not trust my own body. I woke in the middle of the night convinced my throat was closing again. I kept the EpiPen on the pillow beside me like a weapon. I ate plain rice, sealed yogurt, bananas, and crackers from unopened packages because anything prepared by another human being felt dangerous. Speech therapy was worse than I expected. The therapist asked me to hum, breathe, and read short sentences while my voice scraped and vanished. I restored books for people who prized first editions, but I could not restore my own throat by force. Healing did not care how disciplined I was. Work slowed too. I had to delay 2 client projects because my hands trembled after the epinephrine. One university archive asked whether I was emotionally ready to handle a rare collection after such a public incident. They meant well. It still landed like another injury. Celeste had wanted to make me look fragile. For a while, she succeeded. The difference was that I knew fragility was not worthlessness. I had built my career on that truth. Fragile things need better protection, not mockery. Over the next 2 weeks, Malcolm moved like weather coming in over dark water. Chef Moreau signed a sworn affidavit confirming Celeste requested crab fat oil. Andre signed one confirming she directed the bowl to my place setting. Gideon Vale provided a statement describing my symptoms, his use of the EpiPen, Celeste's public comments, and my instruction to preserve the soup. The restaurant provided security footage from the hall outside the kitchen. The hospital released medical records, toxicology, cardiology notes, and a speech therapy plan. Then Malcolm found the searches. Celeste had been arrogant enough to research from her own phone. Can you hide crab oil in soup? How much shellfish causes allergic reaction? Can allergies be exaggerated? Symptoms of anaphylaxis. How fast does EpiPen work? When Malcolm read those to me over the phone, my living room went silent around me. I had been home for 4 days by then, sleeping badly, eating only packaged foods with printed labels, and flinching whenever my own throat felt dry. Nia, Malcolm said, I am here. This moves it from reckless to premeditated. Good. That makes criminal exposure much worse. Good, I said again. He was quiet for a beat. Are you sure you want to offer settlement first? I looked at the flowers my mother had sent, 3 expensive arrangements sitting unopened by the door. I had already called the hospital to ask where to donate them. Yes? Why? Because prison would punish Celeste. The settlement punishes the system that made her think she could do this and be protected. My parents had spent my entire life teaching Celeste that consequences were something other people experienced. They would cry for her, excuse her, finance her, defend her, and call it love. I wanted to send the bill to the altar where they had worshipped her. The mediation was scheduled exactly 21 days after the dinner. By then, I could speak, though every sentence still scraped. The tremor in my hands had faded but not disappeared. My doctor said stress made it worse, which felt like a rude comment from my own nervous system. The mediation room was beige in the way legal spaces are beige when they want money to die without witnesses. Long oak table, leather chairs, bland art, lemon polish, a clock that ticked too loudly. I arrived early with Malcolm. Let the evidence speak, he reminded me. I know. They will try family. I know. They will try tears. I know. If you need a break, ask for one. I will not need one. He looked at me, then nodded. He respected certainty when it had been earned. Celeste arrived 12 minutes late. Of course she did. Even facing financial ruin, she could not resist making people wait. She wore a dove-gray dress, soft and expensive, the kind chosen to make a dangerous woman look wounded. Her hair was pulled back. Her makeup was nearly bare, except I knew how much work it took to appear naturally devastated under fluorescent lights. My parents walked in behind her. My father wore a dark suit and the tight jaw of a man who had already decided he was the victim. My mother carried tissues in one hand and fear in the other. She looked at me like I was a bomb wired to the family name. "Nia," Mom began softly. "Honey, we are so glad you are feeling better." I said nothing. Celeste sat across from me and let her eyes fill. It was impressive, honestly. If I had not watched her perform grief before, I might have believed the moisture. "Nia," she said, voice cracking at the exact right place, "I need you to know I am sorry. I never thought you would almost die. I thought maybe you would get itchy or your throat would feel scratchy. I wanted to tease you. I wanted you to loosen up. You are always so serious." I let the silence sit. She reached across the table. I pulled my hand back. My mother jumped in. "Your sister made a terrible mistake, a horrible mistake. But she did not mean for it to go that far. You know Celeste. She can be impulsive, but she loves you." "No," I said. The word surprised even me. Not because I did not mean it. Because it came out whole. My father cleared his throat. "Nia, at the end of the day, we are your family. Family forgives. Family moves forward." There it was, the old spell, the sentence that had made me swallow birthdays, insults, stolen opportunities, and quiet humiliations because pushing back meant becoming the difficult daughter. This time, it found nowhere to land. "I do not want a family like this," I said. Celeste's face flickered. Mom inhaled sharply. Dad's eyes hardened. "I will not let it go," I said. Malcolm opened his briefcase. The lock clicked. It sounded like a verdict. "Ms. Hartwell," he said to Celeste, not using any sisterly softness, "you are a public relations professional. Your work depends on anticipating consequences, managing optics, and understanding how narratives form. That makes it difficult to argue that you did not understand the seriousness of deliberately introducing a known allergen into someone's food." Celeste went pale. "Deliberately is not..." Malcolm slid the first document across the table. "Chef Luc Moreau confirms you specifically requested crab fat oil be added to a bowl of truffle mushroom soup." Second document. "Andre, the server, confirms you directed that specific bowl to Ms. Nia Hartwell's seat." Third, toxicology confirms shellfish proteins in Ms. Hartwell's system at levels consistent with the contaminated soup. Fourth, medical records document severe anaphylaxis, oxygen saturation in the 70s, vocal cord injury, cardiac strain from emergency epinephrine, ongoing speech therapy, and psychological trauma. Fifth, Malcolm paused. "Your internet searches from 3 days before the dinner are especially concerning." Celeste's mouth opened. My mother whispered, "What searches?" Malcolm read them aloud. "Can you hide crab oil in soup? How much shellfish causes allergic reaction? Symptoms of severe allergic reaction. How fast does EpiPen work? Can allergies be exaggerated?" My father's face emptied. For the first time in my life, my parents looked at Celeste as if her beauty had become transparent and something rotten showed through. "No," Celeste whispered. "That is out of context. The district attorney's office has indicated that, with this evidence, they would consider aggravated assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm," Malcolm said. "Given the planning, potential sentencing exposure could reach 8 years in state custody." My mother began crying. My father stared at Malcolm. "What do you want?" Malcolm looked at me. I nodded. $900,000, he said. The number landed with more force than shouting. Celeste laughed once, sharp and panicked. "That is insane. I do not have that kind of money." "You own a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside Heights valued near $400,000. Malcolm said. "You have jewelry, a vehicle, investment accounts, and retirement contributions. Your parents have home equity and pension assets. The settlement includes a liability release and confidentiality terms once payment clears. The alternative is criminal referral and civil exposure without a cap." "You cannot do this," Celeste said to me. "I can," I said. I am your sister. You were someone who tried to kill me and complained that I got attention while doing it." My mother's sob became louder. "Please," she said. "Nia, do not destroy her life." I looked at her. She put crab oil in my soup. She did not understand. She searched how fast an EpiPen works. Mom closed her mouth. That was the first honest thing she did all day. The negotiation took 45 minutes. My father tried to argue the amount down. My mother cried into tissues. Celeste moved between rage, pleading, and that polished remorse that no longer fit her face. Malcolm did not raise his voice once. In the end, the math was simple. $900,000 or criminal exposure with a likely civil judgment after a public trial. They signed. Before my father signed, he looked at me with a kind of exhausted fury. "You know this will change everything," he said. "It already did. You are making us pay for one bad decision." I touched the base of my throat where my voice still hurt. "No, I am making you stop calling it one." He had no answer for that. Celeste's hand shook as she wrote her name. My parents signed as guarantors, trading retirement comfort for the freedom of the daughter they had trained to believe she could hurt me without consequence. Full payment within 90 days. First installment due in 2 weeks. No contact except through counsel. Violation of terms reopened every option. When it was done, Celeste looked at me with hollow hatred. "You are really walking away from your family?" I stood and picked up my coat. "No," I said. "I am walking away from people who called poison a mistake." I left the beige room without looking back. Behind me, my mother cried my name. My father said something angry. Celeste said nothing. For once, silence suited her. The consequences arrived quietly at first. Vale Meridian Group announced that Celeste Hartwell had resigned to pursue personal priorities. Nobody believed it. Public relations is a field built on translation, and everyone knew how to translate that sentence. Unstable liability, internal risk, removed before she could infect the brand. Gideon did not make a speech about it. He did not need to. The company moved with corporate silence, the kind that erases keycards before rumors finish circulating. Celeste's office was cleaned out by facilities. Her profile vanished from the leadership page. Her congratulatory posts stayed online for a while, frozen evidence of a promotion that had lasted less than a month. That was the part she could not spin. PR people survive bad stories by getting ahead of them. Celeste could not get ahead of a story where the witnesses included her own chef, her own server, her own chairman, and her own search history. Every version she tried made her sound worse. If she said it was a joke, people asked what kind of person jokes with an allergen. If she said she did not understand, people asked why she searched for symptoms. If she said I was vindictive, people asked why I had been on the floor unable to breathe. For once, the truth had better distribution than her lies. Her professional network closed like a book snapping shut. People who had toasted her promotions stopped returning calls. Recruiters went cold. Former friends became busy. The same social machine she had used to elevate herself now evaluated her as dangerous. She sold the Riverside Heights apartment at a loss because fast money always comes with teeth. Jewelry went to consignment. The leased car disappeared. My parents pulled from retirement funds and took a second mortgage on the house to cover the remaining payments. Every transfer that cleared felt less like revenge and more like correction. Celeste tried to climb back the only way she knew. A wealthy divorced man named Preston let her into his life for 2 months after meeting her at an engagement party. She laughed at his jokes, moved into his penthouse, posted careful pictures of wine glasses and skyline views, and tried to rebrand herself as a woman recovering from private family betrayal. Then Preston did what men with money eventually do when something feels wrong. He investigated. The real story was not hard to find if you knew where to look. A woman who poisoned her sister, a settlement, a ruined promotion, a family paying almost $1 million to keep her out of prison. He had his assistant pack her belongings, left them with the doorman, and changed the locks. Last I heard, Celeste was working at a telemarketing company in a strip mall, reading scripts under fluorescent lights for $12 an hour, while strangers hung up on her. I did not celebrate that. Not loudly. But I did hope she thought about soup every time the break room microwave smelled like lunch. My parents kept sending messages through relatives until Malcolm sent one final letter reminding them of the no-contact terms. After that, the silence became official. At first, I thought silence would hurt more. It did hurt. I will not lie about that. Healing from family is strange because nobody brings casseroles for boundaries. People understand hospital bans and oxygen masks. They do not understand the ache of deleting your mother's number, or the shame that comes from feeling relieved when your father's voicemail stops appearing. My therapist told me grief can attach itself to people who never treated you well because what you mourn is not only what happened. You mourn what should have happened. You mourn the parents who should have protected your airway before protecting the family image. You mourn the sister who should have said, "I am sorry I envied you," instead of researching how much shellfish might hurt you without killing you. I hated how much that helped. Some nights I missed the family I had wanted, which is not the same thing as missing the family I had. I missed a mother who would have rushed to the hospital and chosen my breath over Celeste's reputation. I missed a father who would have heard attempted poisoning and thought justice before embarrassment. I missed a sister who could see me admired for 20 minutes without needing to punish my body for it. But imaginary people cannot love you back. I let myself grieve them. Then I built something. 1 year after the dinner, I stood inside Hartwell Conservation Studio, my own company, in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Exposed brick, high windows, custom shelves. Climate-controlled storage, work tables designed exactly to my height. The air smelled like old paper, lemon oil, starch paste, clean cotton, and possibility. The settlement money did not make me rich overnight. Legal fees, medical bills, therapy, speech treatment, and taxes took their share. But what remained was enough to lease the space, buy proper equipment, hire 2 junior conservators, and stop asking institutions to recognize me before I recognized myself. Gideon Vale opened the first door. A month after the mediation, he visited my small apartment with a contract already drafted. "The Vale Family Heritage Library," he said. 400 years of letters, ledgers, first editions, and private documents. I want you to preserve it." "Why me?" He looked at me the way he had looked at that soup bowl, directly and without sentiment. "Because you understand that some things are worth saving, and some things have to be removed before they spread damage." The contract was worth $200,000 a year for 5 years. After that, collectors called, then universities, then private archives. The story that could have made me a victim became, in certain circles, proof of discipline. I was the conservator who preserved evidence while choking. Morbid, yes. Effective, absolutely. By the end of the year, Hartwell Conservation Studio was valued at $2.5 million. My junior conservators, Keisha and Marcus, worked in the back room that afternoon, carefully humidifying folded 18th-century letters before flattening them under weight. Keisha hummed softly when she concentrated. Marcus labeled everything twice because he had learned from me and knew I checked. I walked through the studio touching nothing without gloves, just letting my eyes move over shelves of damaged, beautiful things waiting for care. Water stains, smoke shadows, mold scars, torn bindings, pages made brittle by acid and neglect. Some objects could be restored almost completely. Some could only be stabilized. Some had to be sealed away so their damage did not infect anything else. That was the lesson my work had been teaching me long before I applied it to family. Not everything can be saved. Not everything should be. My phone buzzed on the main work table. Malcolm. Final payment cleared. Case closed. I read the message twice. No fireworks went off inside me, no triumphant music, no sudden burst of forgiveness or rage, Just quiet. The debt was paid. The case was closed. My life was not. I turned toward the restoration table where a 16th-century manuscript waited under soft light. Its pages were darkened at the edges, brittle from age, but the text was still legible, still valuable, still worth saving. I pulled on cotton gloves and selected my tools. Outside, afternoon sun poured through the warehouse windows, catching dust in the air until it looked like gold. My sister tried to turn my deadly allergy into a punchline at her promotion dinner. She thought I would choke, blush, maybe cry, and then spend the rest of my life being told I had overreacted. Instead, she gave me evidence. She gave me freedom. She gave me the money to build the life my family had always treated as small. I preserved what was precious. I removed what was toxic. And for the first time in 26 years, I could breathe without asking anyone's permission. If your sister poisoned your soup to prove your allergy was fake, would you send her to prison or take every dollar she had first? Tell me what you would have done while everyone called it a family mistake.